We have three measures that we need to take up. And first one will be House Bill 1027 by Chairman Stevens. Mr. Chairman, you want to go down here for the House Bill 1027.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1027, substitute an LC 3420S, is the revision of the film tax credit bill. It is the primary changes in the bill that we heard from the subcommittee had some changes in that Representative Abrams had regarding the registration of franchises, that kind of stuff. We took care of that language, I believe, in the bill. Line 50 has to do with the logo. If any of you have ever seen films made in the state of Georgia, the original bill we did in 2006 places a Georgia logo on there for 5 seconds. What wound up happening is it goes on after all the credits are there, and by the way, everybody's left the movie. This fixes that, places it right after the movie, and for some other considerations also. The biggest shell game that was played is on lines 80 and 81. Has to do with the production hiring companies, and it makes sure that those people who are claiming the credits are also making sure that the people who work in Georgia pay Georgia income tax instead of shuffling it through the other states that do not have income tax. Basically, Mr. Chairman, this is a loophole closing bill, and it is, and I'll answer any questions that if there are any.
Question of the author. I see no questions. What's the pleasure of the committee? A motion been made and seconded that do pass. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. It is passed. Thank you, Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 1165. My understanding, Representative Rice is going to present the bill. Mr. Chairman, if you would, come down here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a House Bill 1165 by Representative Clark. All it does is to strike and repeal, effectively, a section on lines 26 through 36 on the second page that has to do with unreturned property. And this bill only effectively applied to those with 600,000 or more. It's never been used. It's effectively a City of Atlanta bill that's never been used, I think, in the history of this legislation. Since Cobb, Gwinnett, and DeKalb have moved across 600,000, they seek to repeal this, and that's the nature of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Questions of the author? Yes, sees none. What's the pleasure of the committee? Move to pass and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Representative Rice. Next bill is House Bill 868. Chair recognizes the governor's floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Just bear with me for a moment. This is, for those of you who've been in subcommittee, this bill has changed down. We are no longer dealing with the tier system. We're taking, all we're doing is adding some of the eligible business, some of which are already eligible, is simply being included in the definition of business enterprise on page 2, and then just clarifying language throughout to make that applicable. And the business enterprise and net liabilities are the same. All the thing that has been taken out that was not in the current bill was the tax code structure and the tier system rewrites, which will no longer be in this bill. Those will stay at the current levels. So really now it is just simply a housekeeping measure to clarify the business entity part.
Question by members of the author. Representative Abrams. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Sims. Turn him on.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, go. I apologize. I apologize. I'm working with this. It's right. It's basically this bill started out as a restructuring of the tier system in Georgia, our tier 1, tier 2, tier 4 system, and was going to add to that, also lower the quality job tax credit. And it's my understanding, due to some clarification issues and also some other things that are going to be coming out with the possible tax reform and others, they've now layered this down. They took that out in order to be able to do other things. This simply now is a clarification bill on adding the business enterprise from which is found on page 2, and just clarifying that to add solar, wind, battery, energy, biofuel, the electric vehicle enterprises, most of which would have already been captured anyway. This is adding to the definition. That's all. This bill has been, from its original 868, it is simply now a clarification and definition bill. That's all it is.
Chairman Rice has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill originally took that job tax credit down to 15
Yes, it
employees,
does.
right? So it stays now at, you have to have above 50?
Yes, it does. There are other pieces of legislation that will deal more with job incentive and jobs credit. This bill was changed now to definition only to give some room for those other pieces of legislation.
Okay.
Because of the cost involved. Because of the cost.
And these other pieces of legislation, I'm not sure I've seen them. Are they in the House or the Senate or where?
This is part of.
Did we?
Yeah. Basically, this is from the economic development. This is the bill after this has been brought down simply to bring after it was decided to remove that from the governor's office in economic development. This is just, they've now limited it basically to updating the definitions and it being a housekeeping bill. They have removed the language concerning tax credits, which we and you.
So there is no other bill dealing with tax credits.
The tier system bill. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. To answer your question, no. At this point, the tier system and job tax credit bills are not going to be moving forward.
Minority Leader Abrams. Madam Minority Leader, do you mind speaking into your mic?
My apologies. Looking at line 167, I know this is a housekeeping bill, but I'm just trying to figure out exactly what we accomplish. And what I see is that we're adding, we're enumerating number of manufacturing for alternative energy products, and then we change from 4 years to 5 years for the length of the tax credit. I guess my question either to you or to Mr. Stansel, if he can answer it, what's the economic impact? Because these are credits that will mean that it's revenue that doesn't come to the state. And while I understand that this is intended as housekeeping, I do wonder what the fiscal impact is.
Can you give me just 1 second? Thank you. Okay. All right, and we also have, this is a DOR change. This is a Department of Revenue change, and it's basically, we've been administering it at 5 years currently, and we're just actually putting that into code at 5 years. If Max had the correct statement. We're simply clarifying what's already been in existence, Representative. Madam Leader.
Representative Alston.
Tell me again, how many employees you have to get this tax credit, and what does it show it to?
We've taken out all the language really that deals in moving the tax credit. You're talking about the quality job tax credit is 50.
So you have to have 50 employees?
No, you have to have, to actually benefit from the quality job tax credit, you would have to add 50 or more employees at the prevailing or higher wage of the county in which the jobs are being created. And that is current law and has been for a number of years. The original intent where this has gotten, and Chairman Rice hit it very clear because we had some great conversations about this bill in committee, is that this is just no longer in play. That has been taken out of this bill and offered in this substitute.
Representative Battle.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr.
You on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a bit confused because it, in the very beginning, it said there was other legislation being proposed, and then there's nothing. Then I understood you saying there is no other. Okay. Could you clarify that for me?
I apologize. Let me just state this: for other reasons that will be. The bill has been changed to its current form to accommodate other proposals of incentive. This is the reason that this bill has come back to a housekeeping measure. That is all that this has at this point, is to do this.
Minority Leader Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Floor Leader, the challenge I've got now is I don't quite understand what we're waiting for.
I apologize for just one moment.
It's okay.
Okay. At this point, if I'll address maybe the questions out there. One of the things is the fiscal impact of this bill, which there was a fiscal note attached to this that went up in I believe 3-year mark, 5 year to $64 million as far as potential impact on what we were doing in increasing the credits and also increasing the quality, lowering the quality job threshold. After further examination, after committee and between subcommittee and full committee, there was a determination made that they wanted to look at that fiscal impact. And at this point, we're not comfortable going forward at this level. They want to look at the tax credit again, and at this point did not want to go forward with the fiscal impact that this bill would have had if it had left in its original form. There is nothing else out there except there are other things and other pressures that said after looking at this, the fiscal impact, we did not want to move forward with this current piece of legislation as it was prior.
If I can ask one final clarifying question, I appreciate that explanation. My concern is that this is a predicate bill that could impact other bills if they come through, if not this committee, then through other tax reform committees. Is there other legislation that will tie to this that we need to take into consideration? Because my concern is we may vote on this as a housekeeping bill, but if it opens the floodgates for a much more substantial action, then a yay vote for this may indicate a yay vote on support for something that is not currently before this body.
No, that is not the intent of the legislation at this point. This is the intent of, the reason for stripping it out at this point was to go ahead and say this is the firm stance of this body to move it as this piece of legislation here. That is, we're not opening it up to other issues. We're simply, at this point, the job tax credit pieces of this legislation, which had a fiscal impact of approaching $64 million, is simply, at this point, after further look by the economic development and others, said that at this point we want to take that back. We want to look at it again and possibly present something that does not have the fiscal impact at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Collins, it does, the good thing about this bill, though, is that it does expand the tax credit to other industries. I mean, in the bill, it expands it to solar, wind, battery, bioenergy, biofuel, electric vehicles, so it still can be looked at as an incentive for businesses in our state.
I mean, and which are some that are already available, and this just simply clarifies that by statute that this is where but we're naming these out.
Should be a good thing for our state.
At this point, again, it is a change. I'm not sitting here saying it's not a change. I never have presented it to this committee in any other way except there was a decision made between subcommittee and here that the fiscal impact, at this point, we did not want to move forward with those job tax credits. We expanded it in the definition to allow others, but other than that, we're not moving the quality job credit or the tier impact of this.
I'm trying to get straight. So this did not pass out of subcommittee in this form. This was changed after you got out of subcommittee. Is that
This
right?
is a substitute that you're seeing before you today, yes.
Any other questions from members of the committee? What is the pleasure of the committee? Move to pass it as second. Moving, motion made and a second made. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. The bill passes. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.